He's not who you think." The whisper was so small it should have disappeared beneath the music, beneath the crystal glasses, beneath the polite laughter of Chicago's richest guests. But somehow it reached William Hartwell like a cold hand closing around his wrist. He looked down and found a little black girl standing beside him in the middle of the Hartwell Children's Foundation gala, her fingers gripping the sleeve of his tuxedo, her eyes fixed across the ballroom with a kind of courage that did not belong in an 8-year-old face. The ballroom at the Langham shimmered gold and white, chandeliers glowing above 500 donors, reporters, politicians, and executives who had come to watch William announce the largest children's education grant in Illinois history. Cameras lined the back wall. Waiters moved between tables with trays of sparkling cider and hors d'oeuvres. On the stage, a giant screen displayed the foundation's motto, "Every child deserves to be seen." William had written that sentence himself, though at that moment, he realized he had nearly walked past the child trying to speak to him. She wore a navy blue dress that looked carefully washed but too thin for the January cold outside. Her braids were tied with pale yellow beads. In one arm, she held a worn brown teddy bear with one missing button eye, pressing it tight against her chest, as if it were the only witness brave enough to stand beside her. "What did you say?" William asked, lowering his voice. The girl did not look at him. She lifted her trembling hand and pointed across the room. "Him," she whispered. "The man with your sister. He's not who you think." William followed her gaze to Daniel Pierce, the polished man standing beside his older sister, Caroline Hartwell. Daniel was smiling beneath the soft glow of the stage lights, one hand resting lightly at Caroline's back, the other shaking hands with a senator from Springfield. He looked every inch the man William had been told to trust: tailored black suit, silver tie, calm blue eyes, warm public smile. In less than 20 minutes, William was supposed to announce Daniel as the new executive director of the Hartwell Children's Foundation. It had been Caroline's idea. After years of grief, loneliness, and hiding behind family obligations, she had finally found someone who made her laugh again. William had wanted to believe in him for her sake. Now a child he had never met was standing in the middle of a $1 million gala telling him that belief was a mistake. "What's your name?" William asked. "Ava," she said, barely moving her lips. "Ava Brooks." The name stirred nothing in him at first, but her face did. Not because he knew it, but because of the way she watched Daniel, not with childish confusion, not with wild imagination, but with recognition. "Ava," William said carefully, crouching just enough so the guests nearest him would not hear. "Why are you saying this?" Ava swallowed. Her fingers tightened around the teddy bear until its old fabric folded beneath her hand. "Because I saw him. In the back hallway." He switched the envelope. William's eyes shifted toward the stage, where 2 sealed envelopes rested on a glass podium. One contained the signed authorization to release $40 million in scholarship funding. The other, according to his legal team, contained ceremonial copies for the press. Everything had been checked, double-checked, and sealed by staff hours ago. "That's a serious thing to say," William said. Ava finally looked at him then, and the room seemed to fade behind her. "I know." Her voice shook, but her eyes did not. "That's why I waited for you." Before William could answer, a soft laugh came from behind them. "Is everything all right here?" Daniel Pierce had crossed the ballroom without William noticing. Up close, his smile was gentle enough to fool a camera. Caroline stood at his side, her pearl earrings catching the light, her expression already tightening with embarrassment. Daniel glanced at Ava, then at William, then lowered his voice into something smooth and careful. "Poor thing. She looks lost." Ava stepped half an inch closer to William. Daniel noticed. His smile did not move, but something in his eyes sharpened. "Sweetheart," Caroline said, trying to sound kind while glancing toward the reporters. "Are your parents here?" Ava did not answer. Daniel bent slightly, hands open, every movement measured for the crowd beginning to look their way. "Maybe security can help find whoever brought her in. This is a private event, William." The word private landed heavier than it should have. Around them, conversations thinned. A woman in diamonds turned her chair. A man near the silent auction table lowered his glass. William could feel the room beginning to choose a version of the story. A respected billionaire, his elegant sister, her charming fiancé, and a small black girl who did not belong among velvet ropes and donor plaques. Ava seemed to feel it too, because her shoulders pulled inward, but she did not run. Instead, she raised her chin and spoke clearly enough for Daniel to hear. Check the video from the back hallway. For the first time, Daniel's face changed. It was only a flicker, no longer than the blink of a camera flash, but William saw it. The smile paused. The eyes cooled. Then Daniel gave a quiet chuckle and looked at William as if inviting him to share the joke. A video, he said. William, come on. This is probably some misunderstanding. Children see things, repeat things, imagine things. We don't need to turn your foundation's biggest night into a spectacle. Ava's cheeks burned, but her voice came again, smaller now, yet steady. He switched the envelope by the service door. The camera saw him. Caroline inhaled sharply. That is enough. Her words were not loud, but they cut through the air. William, the press is watching. William looked toward the back wall. 3 cameras had already angled in their direction. His communications director was walking fast across the room, panic hidden behind a professional smile. On stage, the giant screen still glowed with the sentence, "Every child deserves to be seen." William looked at it, then back at Ava. Her shoes were scuffed at the toes. Her dress sleeve had a careful stitch near the cuff. Her teddy bear's missing eye made its face look permanently wounded, but the child holding it looked determined in a way that made the entire ballroom feel suddenly small. "Mr. Hartwell," Daniel said softly, no longer using William's first name, "the announcement is in 15 minutes. Ava shook her head. "Please," she whispered, "before you sign anything." That was when William understood that the question was no longer whether he believed her. The question was whether he had built a foundation for children only to ignore one when she stood directly in front of him. He straightened, buttoned his tuxedo jacket, and turned toward his head of security. "Take us to the camera room," he said. The music continued playing, but it sounded far away now, thin and uncertain, as if even the violins were holding their breath. Daniel's smile vanished so briefly that only Ava saw it. She clutched her teddy bear tighter as William extended a hand, not to silence her, not to move her aside, but to make sure she walked beside him. Across the ballroom, the sealed envelopes waited under the lights, untouched, while the little girl who was never meant to be heard led a billionaire toward the first piece of truth. The elevator doors closed with a soft metallic whisper, sealing William Hartwell, Ava Brooks, and 2 members of the security team away from the noise of the gala. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the elevator rising through the luxury hotel. Ava stood near the corner, her worn teddy bear pressed against her chest. She stared at the floor, but William noticed that her grip tightened every time the elevator slowed. The child was scared, not the kind of fear that came from getting lost or speaking in front of strangers. It was the fear of someone who had already decided to tell the truth and knew exactly how difficult that choice could become. When the doors opened on the security level, the atmosphere changed immediately. The polished glamour of the ballroom disappeared. Here there were plain walls, bright overhead lights, computer monitors, and the low electronic buzz of surveillance equipment. A young technician stood up so quickly that his chair nearly rolled backward. "Mr. Hartwell," he said nervously, "is something wrong?" William glanced toward the wall of screens displaying camera feeds from every corner of the hotel. "I need footage from the service hallway behind the ballroom," he said, "approximately 30 minutes ago." The technician looked confused but immediately began typing. Beside William, Ava remained silent. She watched the monitors as if searching for something she already knew was there. A minute later, the door behind them opened. Caroline entered first, her heels striking the floor sharply. Daniel followed close behind her. His expression remained calm, but the warmth that had filled his face downstairs seemed thinner now. "William," Caroline said, crossing her arms. "This has gone far enough." William did not answer immediately. He kept his eyes on the technician's monitor. "I want to see the footage." Caroline looked toward Ava. Because a child made an accusation? Ava lowered her eyes, but did not retreat. Daniel stepped forward with a measured sigh. "No one wants to embarrass her," he said gently. "But we have an event downstairs with hundreds of guests waiting. The foundation cannot afford unnecessary drama." His voice was smooth, reassuring, exactly the voice William would have trusted an hour earlier. Yet something felt different now. Perhaps it was because William had seen that brief flash of concern in Daniel's eyes when the cameras were mentioned. Or perhaps it was because Ava had never once changed her story. She had not exaggerated. She had not pleaded. She had simply asked him to look. The technician cleared his throat. I found the footage. Everyone turned toward the largest monitor. Grainy video filled the screen. The service hallway appeared nearly empty. A cleaning cart stood near the wall. Hotel staff occasionally crossed through the frame, carrying supplies. The timestamp showed 42 minutes earlier. The room grew quiet. Ava stared at the screen without blinking. Daniel folded his hands calmly in front of him. Caroline released a slow breath, clearly expecting this entire situation to end within seconds. Then a familiar figure appeared on the monitor. Daniel. He entered the hallway from the ballroom entrance and walked toward a side door. There, Ava whispered. No one answered. The video continued. Daniel paused near a small service table where several event materials had been placed. For a moment, he stood partially hidden behind the cleaning cart. Then he picked up an envelope. The room remained silent. Daniel immediately smiled. That is one of the donor packets, he said. I was reviewing materials before the announcement. The technician nodded uncertainly. It looks like that could be correct. William continued watching. On screen, Daniel examined the envelope for several seconds. Then a hotel employee crossed in front of the camera, blocking most of the view. When the employee passed, Daniel was already walking away. That is it? Caroline asked. This is what we interrupted the gala for. The technician looked relieved. There is no indication of wrongdoing. Daniel spread his hands. Exactly. An unfortunate misunderstanding. Caroline turned toward Ava. Her expression softened slightly, but it carried the gentle disappointment adults often reserved for children. Sweetheart, you probably thought you saw something suspicious. Ava stared at the screen. No, Caroline sighed. The footage does not prove anything. Because the card is blocking it, Ava replied quietly. Daniel laughed softly. You see? She is searching for reasons now. William finally looked at Ava. Most children would have backed down by now. Most would have become flustered or embarrassed. Ava did neither. Instead, she took one careful step closer to the monitor. Keep playing, she said. The technician hesitated. William nodded. Continue. The video rolled forward. Another 30 seconds passed. Daniel exited through a different doorway and disappeared from view. Nothing else happened. Caroline shook her head. William, please. Daniel placed a hand lightly against his chest and offered a sympathetic smile. I think the young lady deserves kindness, not interrogation. For the first time, Ava looked directly at him. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You knew the camera was there. The room froze. Daniel blinked. What? That is why you stood behind the cart. His smile remained, but it looked strained now. That is quite an imagination. Ava hugged the teddy bear tighter. You looked up at it first. William turned sharply toward the monitor. Can we zoom in? The technician adjusted several settings. The image enlarged. Grainy pixels sharpened slightly. The room leaned closer. There, just before Daniel moved behind the cart, he had indeed glanced upward, directly toward the camera. Nobody spoke. It was not proof of anything. People looked at cameras all the time. Yet the atmosphere shifted. Just enough. Just enough for doubt to enter the room. Caroline noticed it immediately. This is ridiculous, she said. Looking at a camera is not evidence. No, William agreed. It is not. Daniel relaxed slightly. Exactly. But William did not look away from the screen. Something was bothering him now. Not the footage itself. The reaction to it. Daniel seemed far more interested in ending the investigation than in answering the question. The technician suddenly frowned. Wait. Everyone turned. He pointed toward the monitor timeline. There may be another angle. Ava lifted her head. Daniel's expression became perfectly still. The technician clicked through several camera feeds connected to the hallway system. Most showed nothing useful. Then he stopped. There is a secondary camera. The room fell silent once again. Unfortunately, the technician continued, it appears to be connected to a different archive server. It will take a little time to retrieve. Ava exhaled slowly. Daniel looked at the monitor. Then at William. Then back at the monitor again. For the first time that evening, the confidence in his eyes seemed to flicker. The technician worked quickly, his fingers moving across the keyboard while rows of code and timestamps flickered across the monitor. Nobody in the room seemed willing to breathe too loudly. William stood with his hands folded behind his back, watching the loading bar crawl across the screen. Caroline paced near the wall, frustration visible in every step. Daniel remained remarkably composed, but the stillness of his posture felt different now. It was no longer the relaxed confidence of a man attending a charity gala. It looked more like someone carefully measuring every word and every reaction. Ava sat quietly in a chair beside the security desk, her teddy bear resting in her lap. She had not asked for attention. She had not demanded anyone believe her. She simply waited. The monitor finally chimed. The technician straightened. I found the backup feed. Every eye in the room shifted toward the screen. What is different about this one? William asked. It comes from a secondary camera mounted near the freight elevator, the technician explained. Most guests never see it because it is part of the hotel service network. Caroline folded her arms. Then let us settle this and get back downstairs. The technician clicked play. The footage appeared from a new angle. The same hallway filled the screen, but this time the service table was fully visible. The cleaning cart that blocked the first camera no longer covered the area. Ava leaned forward slightly. Daniel did not move at all. The timestamp matched the earlier footage exactly. Staff members crossed through the hallway. A catering employee pushed a cart loaded with supplies. Then Daniel entered the frame. Silence settled over the room. William watched closely. Daniel approached the service table carrying a folder. He paused. He looked around. Then he reached toward the sealed envelope. Caroline immediately pointed at the screen. There. He is reviewing event materials. Exactly what he told us. Daniel nodded politely. Thank you. But the technician did not stop the video. The footage continued. Daniel opened the folder he was carrying. For a moment, his body blocked part of the view. Then he removed another envelope. It looked identical to the first one. William felt something tighten in his chest. Nobody spoke. On screen, Daniel placed one envelope into the folder and positioned the second envelope on the service table. The movement lasted only seconds. Clean. Efficient. Almost impossible to notice unless someone was looking for it. Ava lowered her eyes. She already knew what came next. Caroline stared at the monitor. No, she said quietly. Daniel finally moved. That does not prove anything. His voice remained calm, but the certainty was gone. William kept watching. The video continued another 15 seconds before Daniel walked away carrying the folder. The replacement envelope remained behind. The technician paused the recording. The room felt colder than before. Can you zoom in? William asked. The technician enlarged the image. The resolution became grainy, but the details remained clear enough. 2 envelopes. One removed. One left behind. Daniel looked directly at William. There is an explanation. Then explain it, William said. The words were not loud. Somehow that made them heavier. Daniel inhaled slowly. The original envelope had a printing error. I corrected it. William frowned. Without informing legal counsel? Daniel hesitated. It seemed minor. Caroline looked between them. Her confidence had started to crack. Daniel. For the first time all evening, she sounded uncertain. Daniel turned toward her immediately. Caroline, you know me. Ava quietly hugged her teddy bear tighter. Daniel noticed. His eyes flickered toward her for a brief second. This entire situation started because a child made assumptions. Ava looked up. I did not assume. Nobody interrupted her. I saw you switch it. Daniel forced a smile. You saw part of a situation you did not understand. Ava shook her head. Then why were you looking at the camera? The question landed harder than anyone expected. Daniel looked away first. William noticed. So did Caroline. The technician cleared his throat nervously. Actually, there is something else. Everyone turned toward him. He pointed toward the lower corner of the video frame. The backup camera records audio metadata separately. It usually is not activated, but this system stores environmental sound when motion sensors are triggered. William stepped closer. Can you recover it? The technician nodded slowly. Maybe. It will take a few minutes. Daniel's jaw tightened. It was a tiny reaction, almost invisible, but William saw it. Ava saw it too. The little girl did not smile. She did not look triumphant. She simply stared at the monitor with quiet determination. William glanced down at her. The same child who had been dismissed as confused was now the only reason they had discovered any of this. Downstairs, hundreds of guests were waiting for a speech. Reporters were probably wondering why the foundation chairman had vanished. Yet none of that seemed important anymore. The technician began another recovery process. Progress bars appeared across the screen. The room waited. 30 seconds passed. Then 60. The loading indicator reached 20%. Daniel checked his watch. 50%. Caroline sat down slowly, no longer pacing. 70%. The technician suddenly froze. I have something. Nobody moved. The audio file appeared on the screen. William looked toward Daniel. Daniel stared back at the monitor. For the first time since entering the security room, the confidence in his face was completely gone. The technician clicked the audio file. A faint hiss filled the room first, followed by the distant rumble of service carts moving through the hallway. Everyone leaned closer to the speakers. For several seconds, there was nothing useful. Then footsteps echoed through the recording. Daniel appeared on the screen at the exact moment his voice emerged from the audio feed. Everything is set, he said quietly. The room became perfectly still. Another voice answered through what sounded like a phone call. The quality was distorted, but the conversation was unmistakable. Are you sure nobody checked the originals? The voice asked. Daniel glanced over his shoulder in the recording. Relax. Once tonight is over, nobody will question anything. Caroline's face lost all color. Daniel immediately stepped forward. That recording is incomplete. William raised a hand without looking at him. Let it play. The technician obeyed. The audio continued. The replacement documents are already in position, Daniel said in the recording. Tomorrow, everything moves through the foundation exactly as planned. Silence followed. Then the call disconnected. The file ended. Nobody spoke. The hum of the computers suddenly sounded louder than before. Caroline stared at the monitor as if she no longer recognized the man standing beside her. Daniel, she whispered. What replacement documents? Daniel exhaled slowly. He looked from Caroline to William and finally toward Ava. The calm mask he had worn all evening began to crack. You are all jumping to conclusions. William folded his arms. Then explain the envelope. I already did. Explain the recording. Daniel's jaw tightened. Business language taken out of context. William took a step closer. You were discussing documents connected to my foundation. I was discussing efficiency. With whom? Daniel hesitated. That hesitation lasted less than 2 seconds, but it was enough. William noticed it. Caroline noticed it. Even the technician glanced away awkwardly. Ava remained silent. She simply watched. Daniel turned toward Caroline first. You know me better than this. Caroline shook her head slowly. I thought I did. The words seemed to hit harder than any accusation. Daniel looked back at William. You are seriously choosing to trust a child over me? Before William could answer, Ava spoke softly from her chair. No, everyone turned toward her. Ava held her teddy bear against her chest. He is trusting what he saw. The room fell quiet again. Daniel laughed once, but there was no warmth in it. You think you understand what is happening? Ava lowered her eyes. I know when people act different after they get caught. Caroline stared at the little girl. The simplicity of the statement somehow made it impossible to dismiss. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, then stopped. For the first time that night, he seemed unable to find the right words. William looked at the paused image on the monitor. Daniel stood frozen on the screen beside the service table, one hand resting on the envelope he had switched. The image felt impossible to ignore now. Every new piece fit together with the last. Not proof of a crime. Not yet. But proof that Daniel had not told the truth. And that realization alone changed everything. The technician suddenly raised a hand. Mr. Hartwell? William turned. What is it? The young man pointed toward the system logs. There is another issue. His voice sounded uncertain. The original document archive was accessed this afternoon. William frowned. By whom? The technician typed rapidly. The room waited. Seconds passed. Then a name appeared on the screen. Daniel Pierce. Nobody spoke. Caroline slowly sat down in the nearest chair. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. The silence became unbearable. I can explain that too, he said. William looked at him steadily. Then started explaining. Daniel glanced toward the door. For a moment it seemed as if he wanted to leave. Then he straightened his tie and forced another smile. It was weaker than before. The foundation has financial inefficiencies, he said carefully. I was trying to fix them. William's expression did not change. By replacing documents without authorization? By preventing mistakes? By hiding your actions? Daniel did not answer immediately. The room seemed to shrink around him. Caroline stared at the floor. The technician pretended to focus on his keyboard. Ava quietly adjusted the missing-eyed teddy bear in her lap. Nobody rushed him. Nobody interrupted him. The truth was no longer running ahead of them. It was slowly walking into the room one piece at a time. Finally, Daniel looked directly at William. If you continue this investigation, The gala downstairs will be destroyed. William answered without hesitation. Then it will be destroyed. Daniel blinked. You would risk your reputation? William looked toward Ava. The little girl who had been ignored in a ballroom filled with powerful adults sat quietly beside the security desk. She had asked for nothing except that someone look at the evidence. William turned back toward Daniel. A reputation built on ignoring the truth is not worth protecting. The words landed heavily in the room. Daniel's expression hardened. Not dramatically, not angrily, simply honestly. For the first time all evening, he stopped pretending. And when he did, Ava felt a chill run through her. Because the face she saw now looked very different from the smiling man everyone downstairs believed they knew. Nobody said another word for several seconds. The silence inside the security room felt heavier than the music still drifting faintly from the gala floors below. Daniel stood near the monitor with his shoulders straight and his expression carefully controlled, but the polished image that had impressed donors and politicians all evening had begun to fade. William noticed it. Caroline noticed it. Even the young technician seemed unable to look directly at him anymore. Ava sat quietly with the teddy bear in her lap, watching the adults navigate a truth that she had recognized long before any of them. William finally turned away from the monitor and looked at his head of security. I want every document connected to tonight's announcement secured immediately. The guard nodded. Yes, sir. Daniel gave a short laugh. This is becoming ridiculous. William did not react. No documents leave the building. William, no exceptions. Daniel's smile disappeared again. Caroline stared at her brother. She had known William her entire life. She recognized the tone in his voice. Once he reached a decision, almost nothing could move him. You are treating me like a criminal, Daniel said. I am treating you like someone who has not been honest. Daniel looked toward Caroline. Are you really going to stand there and allow this? Caroline opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, she seemed unable to defend him. The realization landed visibly on Daniel's face. William stepped toward the door. Ava, come with me. The little girl blinked. Me? Yes. She stood slowly, holding her teddy bear. Daniel watched her carefully. Not with kindness. Not with anger. With calculation. William noticed that too. Without saying anything, he positioned himself between Ava and Daniel before opening the door. The hallway outside felt strangely empty compared to the tension they had left behind. Bright hotel lights reflected across polished floors. Somewhere below, applause erupted from the ballroom. The gala was continuing without them. William led Ava toward a smaller conference room reserved for executive meetings. Two security officers followed at a respectful distance. Once inside, the door closed softly behind them. For the first time all evening, the noise disappeared. The room contained a long table, several leather chairs, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Snowflakes drifted through the dark sky beyond the glass. Ava stood near the window, staring at the city lights. William loosened his tie and sat across from her. Neither spoke immediately. After everything that had happened, the silence felt surprisingly calm. Finally, William broke it. Tell me everything. Ava looked down at her teddy bear. About what? About Daniel. She hesitated. William waited. He had spent most of his life in boardrooms. He knew that people often revealed more when they were not rushed. Ava slowly traced a finger along the missing button eye of the teddy bear. My mom used to work for your foundation. William frowned slightly. That was not the answer he expected. When? A few years ago. What was her name? Ava swallowed. Monica Brooks. The name hit him immediately. Not because he knew her personally, but because he had seen it before. Somewhere. In reports. In archived personnel files. The memory hovered just out of reach. Ava continued quietly. She always said helping kids mattered more than money. William listened carefully. What happened? Ava stared toward the window. One day she came home upset. Her voice remained calm, but her grip on the teddy bear tightened. She said someone inside the foundation was changing records. William sat perfectly still. Did she know who? Ava nodded. She thought she did. A cold feeling settled in William's chest. And a few weeks later she lost her job. The room fell silent. Snow drifted outside the glass. Traffic lights glowed red and white across the city below. Ava lowered her eyes. Nobody believed her. William remembered the name now. Monica Brooks. An employee dismissed after an internal compliance issue. The case had been reviewed years earlier. He had never looked deeply into it because his executive team assured him everything had been handled properly. Suddenly, that certainty felt fragile. Did your mother ever mention Daniel? Ava nodded again. Not his name. William leaned forward slightly. Then how did you recognize him? Ava opened the small side pocket of her teddy bear. William had not even noticed the pocket before. From inside, she carefully removed an old photograph folded several times at the edges. She placed it on the table. William picked it up. The picture showed a foundation fundraising event from years earlier. Several employees stood smiling near a display banner. Monica Brooks stood among them. And near the edge of the photograph was a younger man. Different haircut, different glasses, but unmistakably Daniel. William stared at the image. My mom kept that picture, Ava whispered. She used to point at him. William looked up slowly. What did she say? Ava's voice became almost a whisper. She said if anything ever happened, remember his face. The room seemed to freeze. Outside, the snow continued falling over Chicago. Inside, William Hartwell looked down at the photograph again and realized this story had started years before a little girl walked into a gala. And somewhere inside the foundation he had spent his life building, a truth had been waiting a very long time to be found. William stared at the photograph for a long moment. The edges were worn white from years of being folded and unfolded. Monica Brooks smiled from the picture, standing beside coworkers at a foundation event that should have represented hope. Near the edge of the frame stood the younger version of Daniel. Different hairstyle, different glasses, same face, same eyes. William slowly placed the photograph back on the table. Ava carefully slid it into the hidden pocket of her teddy bear. Neither spoke for several seconds. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass wall while snow drifted across the Chicago skyline. Finally, William reached for his phone. I need access to every personnel file connected to Monica Brooks. His executive assistant answered immediately despite the late hour. Within minutes, secure records began arriving in his inbox. Ava watched quietly from across the table. William opened the first file, then the second, then the third. The deeper he looked, the more uncomfortable he became. Monica's employment record was unusually thin. Important attachments were missing. Internal review notes appeared incomplete. Entire sections referenced supporting documents that no longer existed in the archive. William frowned. This does not make sense. Ava looked up. What? William turned the screen slightly toward her. Someone removed records. The little girl did not appear surprised. That bothered him more than anything. A child should have been shocked by a discovery like that. Ava looked as if she had expected it all along. My mom said that happened a lot. William felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. Before he could ask another question, a knock sounded at the door. His head of security entered carrying a tablet. Sir, I think you should see this. William stood. The security officer handed him the device. A message had just arrived from the technician downstairs. While searching archive servers connected to the foundation, he had discovered a secondary database, one that had not appeared in official reports. William immediately opened the file directory. Hundreds of records filled the screen. Some were financial. Some were personnel files. Many were marked as archived even though they should have remained active. Who has access to this? William asked. Very few people, the guard replied. According to the permissions log, Daniel Pierce was one of them. Silence settled over the room. Ava lowered her eyes to the teddy bear. William looked through the timestamps. Daniel's account appeared repeatedly, week after week, month after month, long before he became engaged to Caroline, long before anyone considered placing him in charge of the foundation. The pattern disturbed him. Daniel had not suddenly appeared in their lives. He had been quietly moving through the organization for years. There is more, the guard said. William looked up. Go on. The technician found a file that was recently accessed tonight. William immediately opened it. The document contained old internal complaints submitted by employees. Most had been dismissed years ago. One name appeared near the top. Monica Brooks. Ava sat up straighter. William opened the attachment. The screen filled with a scanned statement. Monica had reported concerns about altered scholarship records and inconsistencies in funding allocations. She never accused anyone directly. She simply requested an investigation. William read every line. Then he noticed the final page. The page that changed everything. At the bottom sat a handwritten note added during the review process. Complaint unsubstantiated. Employee credibility concerns. Case closed. Below the note was an approval signature. Daniel Pierce. William stared at the screen. The room suddenly felt smaller. He reviewed her complaint himself, he said quietly. Ava's fingers tightened around the teddy bear. She told me nobody listened. William understood why now. If Daniel had controlled the review, then Monica never had a chance. Another notification appeared on the tablet. The technician had found security footage from a foundation office nearly 4 years earlier. William opened it. Grainy images filled the screen. Employees moved through hallways carrying folders and laptops. Then Monica appeared. She was leaving an office with a box of personal belongings. Her shoulders were straight. Her expression calm. Not angry. Not defeated. Simply disappointed. Ava looked away. William could not stop watching. Monica paused near the exit. She turned and looked back toward the building one last time before leaving. The footage ended. No dramatic confrontation. No public argument. Just a woman walking away from a place she once believed in. William felt something heavy settle inside his chest. He had built the foundation to help children. Yet somehow people like Monica had been pushed aside while men like Daniel moved upward. The realization was painful. A soft knock interrupted the silence again. This time Caroline entered. Her eyes were red, though she had clearly tried to hide it. She looked from William to Ava, and then toward the tablet. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. William did not answer immediately. Instead, he handed her the device. Caroline read the complaint, then the approval signature, then the archive logs. Her face changed with each page. When she finally looked up, the certainty she had carried all evening was gone. "How long?" she whispered. William shook his head. "Longer than we realized." Caroline sat down slowly. Across the room, Ava watched her. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Only sadness. Because for the second time that night, another person was discovering that trust could be stolen without anyone noticing until years later. The conference room remained quiet long after Caroline finished reading the files. Snow continued drifting beyond the windows, soft white flakes crossing the dark Chicago skyline like silent witnesses. William stood near the table with his hands resting on the back of a chair. Across from him, Ava sat holding her teddy bear while Caroline stared at the screen of the tablet, reading the same pages again and again as if different answers might suddenly appear. None did. The facts remained unchanged. Daniel had reviewed Monica Brooks's complaint. Daniel had access to hidden archive systems. Daniel had been connected to altered records for years. Yet something still bothered William. The evidence explained what had happened in the past, but not what was happening tonight. Why risk everything now? Why switch the envelope during the most public event of the year? The question lingered in the room. Then William's phone vibrated. A message appeared from the technician downstairs. "Found something else. Urgent." William immediately opened the attachment. It contained a screenshot taken from another camera angle near the ballroom stage. At first glance it seemed ordinary. Guests talking. Staff moving equipment. Decorations glowing beneath warm lights. Then he noticed a reflection in a glass display case near the stage entrance. The reflection showed part of the service hallway from a different angle. William enlarged the image. His eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Caroline asked. William handed her the phone. Caroline looked confused for a moment. Then she saw it too. Reflected in the glass was Daniel standing beside the service table. But he was not alone. Another person stood partially hidden beside him. Only half the figure was visible in the reflection. A dark coat. A silver watch. A phone pressed against one ear. "Who is that?" Caroline whispered. William immediately called the technician. "Can you identify the second person?" Several seconds passed before the reply came. "Working on it now." The room waited. Ava watched quietly. Her small fingers rested against the worn fabric of the teddy bear. William noticed something. She seemed focused on the reflection image more than anyone else. "Ava," he asked gently, "have you seen that person before?" Ava leaned forward. Her eyes widened slightly. "Maybe." William exchanged a glance with Caroline. "Maybe." Ava pointed carefully at the silver watch visible in the reflection. "I remember that watch." William felt his pulse quicken. "From where?" Ava looked down. "My mom had another picture." The room froze. "Another picture?" William asked. Ava nodded. "She kept it in a box at home." "What was in it?" Ava hesitated. "The same man." William sat down across from her. "The man with Daniel?" Ava nodded again. "Mom said he always showed up whenever records disappeared." Silence settled over the room. William immediately understood what that meant. Daniel might not have been acting alone. The possibility changed everything. Before anyone could speak, another message arrived from the technician. Identification confirmed. William opened the file. A personnel record appeared on the screen. The second man in the reflection was a former financial consultant named Gregory Shaw. According to the record, Gregory had officially left the foundation almost 3 years earlier. Yet the image placed him inside the gala tonight. Caroline looked stunned. Why would he be here? William scrolled further. More information appeared. Gregory Shaw had worked directly with several financial restructuring projects connected to archived scholarship funds. The same programs Monica Brooks had questioned years earlier. The same programs Daniel had reviewed. William slowly lowered the phone. The pieces were beginning to connect. Not completely. Not yet. But enough to reveal a larger picture. Daniel was not protecting a mistake. He was protecting a network of decisions stretching back years. Ava quietly reached into the hidden pocket of her teddy bear again. William looked at her. What is it? She removed a folded piece of paper. Mom left this too. William carefully accepted it. The paper was old and creased from age. Written across the top were several names. Monica's handwriting filled the page. Most of the names meant nothing to William at first. Then he saw two that did. Daniel Pierce. Gregory Shaw. Underneath the names was a short handwritten note. If anything happens, follow the records. William stared at the words. A strange feeling moved through him. Monica Brooks had known she might never be believed. Yet she had preserved clues anyway. She had trusted that someday someone would follow them. Not a lawyer. Not an investigator. Not a billionaire. A little girl carrying a worn teddy bear into a crowded ballroom. Caroline covered her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to warn people, she whispered. Ava nodded quietly. Nobody listened. William looked at the list again, then toward the city beyond the glass, then back at Ava. For years he had believed his foundation was changing lives. Now he was beginning to understand that one forgotten employee and one brave little girl might be the reason it could still be saved. William read Monica Brooks's handwritten note 3 more times. The words never changed. If anything happens, follow the records. The sentence seemed almost impossibly simple, yet it connected every discovery from the night. The hidden archive, the altered documents, the unexplained access logs. Daniel Pierce, Gregory Shaw. Years of questions that had quietly disappeared behind official reports and polished presentations. William folded the note carefully and handed it back to Ava. She placed it inside the teddy bear's hidden pocket as though it belonged there. A moment later his phone vibrated again. Another message from the technician. This time there was no explanation attached. Only a file labeled Event Stage Archive. William opened it immediately. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. At first glance it looked like an ordinary event planning document. Then he noticed something unusual. Several authorization codes connected to tonight's scholarship announcement had been modified within the last 48 hours. The changes were linked to an administrative account. Daniel Pierce. Caroline closed her eyes briefly. Each new discovery felt heavier than the last. How much access did he have? She asked quietly. William continued scrolling. Too much. The spreadsheet revealed that after tonight's announcement, a large portion of scholarship oversight would automatically transfer into a newly created management structure. The paperwork appeared legitimate. Every signature field seemed complete. Every approval line looked official. But now William understood why the envelope switch mattered. The replacement documents were not ceremonial copies. They were the final link in a chain that would place enormous control into the hands of people who should never have received it. Ava listened carefully. She did not understand every financial term, but she understood something important. Her mother had been right. The records mattered. Another message arrived. This one came from the head of security downstairs. Daniel Pierce had requested access to leave the building. William immediately stood. Where is he now? Still inside the hotel, came the reply. But he is asking questions about the investigation. Caroline looked alarmed. He knows we found something. William nodded. Then we are out of time. The room suddenly felt different. The slow investigation of the evening was ending. The truth was no longer hiding in forgotten files and archived databases. It was moving toward the ballroom below, toward hundreds of guests waiting for a speech that had not yet happened. William walked toward the window overlooking the city. Snow covered the streets beneath them in a thin white layer. Thousands of lights stretched across Chicago. Somewhere among them, children depended on the foundation he had built. Children whose futures should never have been treated like numbers inside hidden spreadsheets. He turned back toward Ava. Do you know why your mother kept those records? Ava thought for a moment. Because she wanted somebody to see them one day. William felt a lump form in his throat. I think you are right. Caroline slowly stood from her chair. The uncertainty that had consumed her earlier was being replaced by something else. Resolve. Painful, reluctant resolve, but resolve nonetheless. What happens now? She asked. William looked at the files spread across the table. The photograph. The complaint. The archive logs. The reflection image. The authorization changes. The list of names. Alone, each piece raised questions. Together, they formed a story. A story Daniel had spent years trying to control. Now, William said quietly, we stop hiding this. At that exact moment, another notification appeared on the tablet. The technician had completed one final recovery process. William opened the attachment. A video file filled the screen. It came from the ballroom itself. The timestamp matched only 20 minutes earlier. The recording showed Daniel standing near Gregory Shaw beside a decorative glass display. The audio was faint but clear enough to hear a single sentence. Gregory glanced toward the stage and asked, after tonight, nobody can reverse it, right? Daniel smiled. Not the friendly smile donors had seen. Not the charming smile Caroline had trusted. A different smile. Calm. Certain. By tomorrow morning, he replied. Everything belongs to us. The room fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Ava stared at the screen. Caroline covered her mouth. William looked at the frozen image of Daniel and realized the search for proof was over. For the first time that night, there was no uncertainty left. Only a decision waiting to be made. William Hartwell stared at the paused video on the tablet. The image of Daniel Pierce remained frozen on the screen, his confident smile preserved in digital silence. By tomorrow morning, everything belongs to us. The words echoed through William's mind. For years he had trusted reports, advisors, and polished presentations. Tonight a little girl carrying a worn teddy bear had shown him what he had failed to see. He slipped the tablet under his arm and looked toward Caroline. His sister stood motionless beside the conference table, her eyes fixed on the evidence. The future she thought she was building had disappeared in a single evening. Yet when she finally looked up, William saw something important. She was no longer defending Daniel. She was facing the truth. It is time, William said quietly. Downstairs, the ballroom remained full. Hundreds of guests still occupied their tables beneath the chandeliers. Reporters waited near the stage. Donors exchanged polite conversation while musicians played soft music across the room. Few realized that the delayed announcement had already become the most important moment in the foundation's history. William, Caroline, Ava, and the security team entered through a side hallway. Conversations immediately softened. Heads turned. People sensed that something had changed. Daniel stood near the stage speaking with several guests. Gregory Shaw was nowhere to be seen. The moment Daniel noticed William approaching, his expression tightened. William, he said, forcing a smile. Everyone is waiting. William climbed the stage steps without answering. The room gradually fell silent. A spotlight illuminated the podium. Cameras turned toward him. William looked across the crowd. Then he looked at Ava standing near the front row, clutching her teddy bear. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. The ballroom became still. It was supposed to be a night about opportunity, trust, and the future of children who depend on this foundation. He paused. Instead, it became a reminder that trust must be earned every day. Murmurs spread through the room. Daniel's smile vanished. William continued. This evening evidence came to light concerning actions that do not reflect the values of this organization. Reporters immediately lifted their cameras. Daniel stepped forward. William, this is not the place. William turned toward the giant screen behind him. Actually, it is exactly the place. The screen illuminated the ballroom with pale light. The first image appeared. Security footage from the service hallway. Guests leaned forward. Then came the second angle showing the envelope exchange. More whispers followed. Then the audio recording. Then the archive logs. Then Monica Brooks's complaint. The ballroom grew quieter with each piece of evidence. Finally, William played the recovered video containing Daniel's own words. By tomorrow morning, everything belongs to us. Silence crashed over the room. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Daniel stared at the screen. The carefully crafted image he had spent years building unraveled in seconds. Caroline closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, she walked away from him and joined her brother near the podium. The gesture said more than any speech could have. Daniel looked around the room as if searching for someone who still believed him. He found no one. William lowered the microphone. The appointment announced for tonight is canceled. A wave of reaction moved through the audience. An independent review will begin immediately. Every scholarship record, every archive, every financial document will be examined. Applause started slowly from one corner of the ballroom. Then another. Then another. Within seconds the room filled with it. Not celebration. Relief. The relief that comes when truth finally reaches daylight. William stepped down from the stage and walked directly toward Ava. The applause gradually faded as guests watched. Ava looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. William knelt beside her. The billionaire who had addressed presidents and corporate leaders lowered himself to eye level with an 8-year-old girl. I should have listened sooner, he said softly. Ava hugged the teddy bear against her chest. You listen now. William smiled sadly. Because you were brave enough to speak. Tears filled Caroline's eyes. Several reporters lowered their cameras. For a moment the ballroom seemed to disappear. There was only a little girl, a teddy bear with one missing button eye, and the truth her mother had protected for years. A week later the foundation officially cleared Monica Brooks's record. Her complaint was restored to the archives along with every document connected to her case. New scholarship programs were created under stricter oversight. One of them carried a simple name, the Monica Brooks Truth and Opportunity Fund. On the day the announcement became public, Ava visited the foundation headquarters. A framed photograph of her mother stood in the main lobby. Beneath it was a plaque honoring integrity and courage. Ava stared at it quietly. Then she placed her teddy bear on a nearby chair and smiled. For the first time in years, her mother's voice had finally been heard. And all because one little girl refused to stay silent when everyone else looked away.